The rain came down hard at dusk, turning the city into a blur of shadows and neon reflections, and as the Uber rolled through the soaked streets, the drops sliding down the window felt like they were tracing the unease I couldn't yet name. Still, a small bubble of happiness stirred inside me. I'd finished my business trip a full day early, toughest contract of my career finally signed. 10 years of grinding, sacrificing, carrying the weight of the entire family on my shoulders, turning myself from a timid young woman into a ruthless professional powerhouse. Also my husband, Cassius, could stand tall in front of others. Tonight, I told myself, I'd cook a real meal, something warm and homemade, to make up for all those lonely takeout dinners he'd endured while I built our life. But the moment I entered the parking garage, my steps stopped cold. In Spot B15, the premium space I'd paid over $50,000 to own, sat a cherry red Mustang. My stomach tightened as I read the plate. Anaya. My sister-in-law. My mind raced. It was a Tuesday. Tavon, my brother, was managing a construction site miles away. Anaya should have been at work or with her parents. So why was her car here? I tried to brush it off, convincing myself she must have stopped by briefly for something innocent, but the unease followed me into the elevator, where my reflection stared back. 35 years old, flawless suit, tired eyes carved deep from years of sleepless nights and silent endurance. I wondered, not for the first time, whether my husband still saw a woman, or just a machine that printed money. When I reached the 18th floor, I moved quietly, sliding my finger over the biometric lock instead of ringing the bell. The door opened with a soft click. The condo was dim, curtains drawn, lavender lingering in the air mixed with something unfamiliar. I kicked off my heels just as a sound drifted from the bedroom. A sound that didn't belong. Breathless moans. A man's heavy breathing. My blood froze, then burned. I crept forward, heart pounding, and peeked through the slightly open door. On the bed I'd made before leaving, tangled in charcoal gray sheets, were two Esme, husband and the woman I'd treated like my own sister. Cash's voice cut deeper than any blade. "You're so pure, baby. Not like my old lady. She doesn't even turn me on anymore, just dry, obsessed with money." Anaya giggled, teasing him about being scared of me. He laughed, full of contempt. "She's not coming back till tomorrow. And if she did, I'd say you came to ask about a broken pipe. That stupid woman believes everything." Something inside me shattered, but something else sharpened. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them. I filmed. 2 minutes. 2 minutes of truth. Then I slipped away like a ghost, heart in pieces, body shaking, and told the Uber driver to take me straight to my best friend Mikaelami, lawyer, my anchor. When she saw the video, even her steel composure cracked. She gripped my hand and said the words that saved me: "Don't react. Don't confront. If you do, you lose everything. Stay calm. Let them destroy themselves." And I listened. After a few hours, I fixed my makeup, masked the pain, and returned home late that night, ready to perform the most dangerous role of my life. I opened the door loudly and called out sweetly, "Honey, I'm home." Cassius rushed out, panic flickering behind his smile, hugging me too tightly, lying too easily. But the perfume still lingered. Coco Mademoiselle. The same bottle I'd gifted Anaya myself. Proof hung in the air, undeniable. I pulled away, pretending exhaustion, and said calmly, "I'm tired. I'm going to shower and sleep." And as I walked toward the bedroom, I knew this wasn't the end. This was the beginning. Upon entering the room, the first thing that caught my attention was an almost unnatural order. And what surprised me most were the sheets. I remembered perfectly having put on a set of charcoal gray tencel sheets before leaving. But now in their place was a cheap pastel pink cotton set that I had banished to the back of the closet a long time ago. I turned to Cases with an expression of feigned surprise. "Hey, why did you change the sheets? I had just put the other ones on." Cassius jumped and stammered for a couple of seconds before giving a quick explanation. "Oh, yeah. This afternoon while watching TV, I spilled a cup of coffee on the bed and it stained everything. So I put them in the wash. I pulled these out to make do. A lie so clumsy that even a child would have discovered it, but I just nodded with a slight smile. Wow, you're so clumsy. Well, I'll change them again tomorrow. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and turned the shower on full blast. Under the stream of water, I didn't cry. I looked at myself in the mirror with dry, cold eyes. In the stillness of the night, the ticking of the wall clock resonated. Each dry beat like a hammer blow to my bleeding heart. Cassius slept beside me. His breathing was regular. That broad back I once considered my greatest refuge now felt strange and terribly cold to me. I curled up on the edge of the bed, trying to make myself as small as possible so as not to brush against his skin. The sensation of disgust I had felt since the afternoon was still stuck to me like a layer of mud impossible to wash off. I lay with my eyes open, staring at the dark ceiling, wondering how a person could change so much in so little time. 10 years of sharing everything. Were they not worth more than a moment of fleeting pleasure? I waited for the clock to strike 2 in the morning. Cassius' snores became deeper and constant. I knew my moment had arrived. Holding my breath, I turned with slow and cautious movements like a thief acting in her own house. The light from the nightstand illuminated Cassius's face. He slept peacefully without a trace of guilt or worry. That only stoked the fury inside me. With extreme care, I took his hand, the same hand I had held tightly on our wedding day. Now I used it to unlock his phone, which was on the nightstand. The screen lit up, its bluish light projecting a frigid glow onto my face. Quickly, I lowered the volume and began my silent investigation. WhatsApp, Instagram, text messages, everything was spotless, like a blank page. Not a single trace, not a suspicious message. That perfect cleanliness was proof of his meticulous preparation. But I wasn't a naive woman easy to fool. I knew the tricks of men who want to hide secrets all too well. I went into the app settings looking for hidden folders skillfully disguised as work management software, and sure enough a secure messaging appeared that required a numeric password. I tried his date of birth without success. Our wedding anniversary didn't work either. Finally, I entered Anaya's date of birth. The screen unlocked instantly, revealing an avalanche of messages. The images were so vulgar I had to close my eyes to suppress the nausea. But that wasn't all. Trembling, I accessed his banking app, where I trustingly let him manage his personal expenses. The transaction history appeared like a crushing sentence. The figures danced before my eyes, and I felt as if someone were squeezing my heart. Transfer of $52 concept for my baby. Transfer of $13,000 concept a life by your side. Those numbers, codes of love among teenagers, were now being used by my husband, a 40-year-old man, to seduce his sister-in-law. And worst of all, a transaction from last week, a credit card payment of $10,000 at a luxury jewelry store. I remembered that day Cassius had come home with a face like a funeral, complaining that the company was doing poorly, that bonuses had been cut, and that he couldn't give me money for household expenses that month. At that moment, pitying him, I believed him so he wouldn't feel pressured. Not only did I not ask him for anything, but I transferred money to his account so he would be more comfortable. It turned out that my generosity and trust had served for him to embezzle family accounts and buy expensive jewelry for his mistress. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every transfer. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped the phone. After sending all the evidence to my own mobile and erasing any trace of my access, I put his phone back where it was. I lay down, but my body was frozen as if I had just come out of a walk-in freezer. The next morning, I got up earlier than usual and prepared a full breakfast as always, but my heart was completely cold. Cass came out of the bedroom stretching and yawning. Seeing me set the table, he smiled. What a hard-working woman. Breakfast already ready. I served him a bowl of grits and placed it in front of him. I tried to make my voice sound normal, but my eyes, sharp as knives, scrutinized him. Eat while it's hot. Hey, by the way, yesterday when I came back, I saw Anaya's car parked in our spot. Weird, right? Tavon wasn't there. What was she doing here during office hours? I thought she'd be working. Cassius, who was bringing a spoonful to his mouth, jumped so much that the spoon fell with a dry clatter into the bowl, splashing the table. His face palled instantly. He bent down in a hurry to pick it up, hiding his nervousness. Oh, yeah. Well, I guess she came to drop something off for Tavon. I don't know, honestly. I was stuck in the office all day. I observed his clumsiness, feeling an indescribable bitterness. This man I once considered my everything was now just a clumsy and cowardly liar. I smiled, a faded smile. Oh, right. I thought you would know. The doorman told me her car was parked there for a long time, all afternoon. Cassius fell silent abruptly, eating with his head down, not daring to look at me even once. The atmosphere of the breakfast became dense, heavy, as if a slab were crushing our chests. After the spoon incident, Cassius became much more cautious. He walked on tiptoes, spoke in a low voice, and constantly threw sideways glances at me. Every time I picked up my phone, his body tensed. He knew the prey was starting to smell danger, but the trap I had set was just beginning to close. That night, I came home later than usual on purpose, so he would wait for dinner with anxiety. When I entered, dinner was cold, and he was sitting on the sofa with an expression of unease. Seeing me, he jumped up to reheat the food. That excessive kindness felt even more repugnant to me, because I knew that behind that fake concern hid a universe of guilt. During dinner, as I served him a piece of catfish on his plate, I dropped a question into the air, light as a breeze. Honey, you're sleeping poorly lately. You look bad. Cassius paused for a moment and then forced a smile. Well, sometimes I have a lot of stress at work. It's a bit hard to sleep. Why do you ask? I put down my silverware and looked him directly in the eyes. My gaze was no longer that of a sweet wife. It contained a sharp suspicion. It's just that today when I went to turn off the light, the doorman stopped me to ask me something. He says, the nights I was away, he saw you leave with the car in the middle of the night and come back almost at dawn. I told him he was surely mistaken, that you sleep like a log, but he insisted he saw our car's license plate. Cassius' face went from red to pale white. He almost choked on the bite he was chewing. He grabbed the glass of water and drank in a long gulp to calm himself. His eyes moved non-stop, avoiding my direct gaze. Beads of sweat started to break out on his forehead, even though the air conditioning was set to 72 degrees. That doorman, he's probably old and seeing things. Where would I go at those hours? What nonsense. His voice had become abnormally high-pitched, a clear sign of someone who feels discovered and tries to cover up the truth. I sighed, feigning genuine concern, and put my hand on his forehead. I told him that too, but he described it to me in detail. He said the car was heading toward the outskirts. I'm getting worried. What if you're sleepwalking? I read in the paper that a lot of people with stress do unconscious things at night and don't remember anything in the morning. What if we go to the doctor tomorrow? It's dangerous. If something happens to you on the road, what would become of me? My words, loaded with apparent solicitude, were actually pliers tightening his terrified mind. I was executing my plan to plant in his head the fear that his secret escapades had been discovered, but under an appearance of innocence. Cassius pushed my hand away, visibly upset, and got up to pace from one side of the living room to the other. No, that's not necessary. Surely, it's that I'm sleepwalking. Lately, I'm very tense. I'll regulate myself. I'll drink some herbal tea and that's it. No need to spend money on doctors. I followed his back with my gaze, smiling inwardly. If he clung to such a ridiculous excuse as sleepwalking, it meant that fear had already overcome his reasoning. I continued with another psychological blow. Well, be very careful. I've heard that if you wake a sleepwalker suddenly, they can suffer a shock. And the doorman also told me that one of those nights he thought he saw your car around Anaya's house area. I suppose you were worried she was alone and stopped by to see how she was, right? You're so thoughtful. My last sentence was like a fatal stab. Cassius stood petrified. He turned abruptly to look at me with eyes bulging with panic. What? That's not true. Don't listen to nonsense. I'm going to sleep. I have a headache. With that, he fled to the bedroom like a fugitive and slammed the door shut. I was left alone before the half-finished dinner. I took a sip of cold soup. A bitter taste spread through my mouth. His fear was exactly what I wanted to see. I wanted him to live with constant anguish, unable to eat or sleep in peace, just like me at that moment. That night, Cassius tossed and turned in bed without being able to sleep. He turned over again and occasionally picked up his phone secretly to type a message that he quickly deleted. I had my back to him, pretending to be deeply asleep, but I listened to every one of his labored breaths. I knew those messages were for Anaya to warn her of the danger and plan a strategy. Keep worrying, keep planning, I thought, because the more you thrash about, the deeper you'll sink into the mud I've prepared for you. The night enveloped the room, but inside me a flame of revenge burned, illuminating the darkest corners of this marriage. The next morning, I left the house earlier than usual with the excuse of an important meeting. In reality, I had an appointment with the private investigator Makata had recommended. The cafe, situated in a quiet alley, was completely isolated from the city bustle. The detective handed me a thick brown envelope, looking at me with a mixture of compassion and pity. I took a deep breath and with trembling hands opened the envelope. Although I had mentally prepared myself, seeing the photos inside, I felt as if someone had punched me in the chest, a pain that left me breathless. It turns out they didn't need to wait for the night or my business trips. Cassius and Anaya had turned their lunch break into their ideal time for dates. In those sharp photographs, they were sitting in discreet cafes, holding hands, looking at each other with the same passion as two first-time lovers. In one photo, Cassius was wiping Anaya's mouth with tenderness. The smile on his face was so radiant and sweet that I was stunned. He hadn't smiled at me like that in a long time. There were other photos where they entered together into a baby-hour motel hidden in an alley and came out an hour later looking satisfied, and with disheveled clothes. I went through the photos one by one. Each was irrefutable proof of the infamous betrayal of the two people closest to me. Not only were they deceiving me and Tavon, but they were trampling on basic morality in broad daylight. I remembered the times I had called Cassius at noon, and he whispered that he was in a meeting or taking a nap in the office because he was exhausted. It turns out his exhaustion came from servicing his mistress. Disgust invaded me. I felt nauseous thinking I had shared a bed with this man, that I had trusted him blindly. I put the photos in my bag, paid the detective, and drove to the office. I spent the whole day working like an automaton, trying to bury myself in paperwork so as not to think about those dirty images. In the evening, upon returning home, Cassius returned to playing the role of the exemplary husband. He came out to greet me with enthusiasm, asking if I was tired, if I wanted him to prepare something special for dinner. Seeing his hypocritical face, I just wanted to scream in his face that I knew everything, but I held back. I'm a little tired. Must be the weather change. You have dinner if you want. I'm going to rest a bit. Cassius seemed disappointed but insisted on appearing attentive. He followed me to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and raised his hand to give me a shoulder massage. Let me give you a massage. You work too hard for this house. As soon as his hand touched my shoulder, I shuddered and pulled away, as if he had touched something repugnant. My instinctive reaction left him paralyzed with his hands suspended in the air. No, honey, my body hurts a lot. Don't touch me. Let me lie down for a while and it will pass. I rushed to find an excuse, covering myself with the blanket to hide the disgust drawn on my face. Cases withdrew his hand with a shadow of doubt in his eyes that quickly transformed into resignation. Okay, well, rest. I'm going to watch TV to let you sleep. When the door closed, I could finally let out my breath. Tears sprang forth, soaking the pillow. I wasn't crying for him. I was crying for me. For my 10 years of youth wasted on the wrong person. The sensation of being betrayed, of being belittled, hurts more than any physical wound. It ate away at my soul little by little, turning me from a woman full of love into an iceberg. That night, Cases got back into bed and tried to hug me from behind. His warm breath on the back of my neck made my skin crawl. His hands started to search for me, seeking intimacy, but my body went rigid. I pushed his hand away firmly. I told you I'm tired. Let me sleep. Kasia sighed deeply, turned over, and muttered something clearly dissatisfied. I lay motionless with my eyes open in the darkness, listening to his sighs. My heart was a block of ice. Physical contact with him had become torture. I couldn't stand sharing a bed with a man who had just rolled around with another woman, who was also my sister-in-law. The physical distancing was the first sign that this marriage was clinically dead. But Cases, in his arrogance, believing his deception was perfect, still hadn't realized the danger looming over him. He kept thinking my tiredness was temporary, or that I was angry about some nonsense. He didn't know I was accumulating evidence, accumulating hate to prepare the most terrible punishment for him. Those lunch dates, those hands clasped in secret. Everything would be part of the sentence I had reserved for him. And that day was not far off. With the evidence of infidelity in my possession, I decided to move to the next phase of my plan, examining the bloodstream of our marriage. The finances. I knew Cassius valued money enormously. He was with me partly because I was the main economic support of the house, while his career was mediocre and depended on my influence to get contacts. I needed to confirm how much family money he had diverted to support his mistress. And more importantly, I wanted to see his reaction when I cornered him on the subject of money. One weekend evening, I prepared a more elaborate dinner than usual. I served him a glass of wine and created a relaxed and cheerful atmosphere. When Cassius was already a little tipsy with a flushed face and talking nonstop about grandiose plans, I started speaking softly. Honey, today I went to see a plot of land on the outskirts. It's beautiful, an excellent location, and the price is a steal because the owner needs the money urgently. I was thinking of taking out our joint savings to put down a deposit. It would be a shame to let an opportunity like this pass. As I spoke, I watched his expression closely. Just as I expected, the smile was wiped from his face instantly. The wine glass in his hand started to shake. Just seconds ago, his eyes were dull with alcohol, but now they were sharp. Alarmed. He set the glass down too quickly, swallowed hard, and stammered, "Land. Right now. The market is frozen. Buying now would ruin us. And why would you pull out money without even talking to me first?" I smiled. Soft. Calm. But firm. "That's exactly why," I said. "It's a steal. Money sitting in the bank barely grows. Land does. Real wealth is built that way. Tomorrow we go to the bank together. We'll withdraw $100,000, and then we'll see about the rest." The moment he heard that number, his face drained of color. Sweat formed along his temples. $100,000? He whispered. "Wait, actually what?" I pressed, locking eyes with him. That's when he took a deep breath and told the lie I already expected. "I invested all our savings in the stock market," he said. "The market crashed. I'm trapped. If I sell now, we lose almost half." Ah yes. The classic excuse. The stock market lie, the favorite cover story of husbands who secretly drain family money. Because I knew the truth. He'd never seriously invested in stocks. I had already traced the withdrawals, little by little, into a secret account. Money that ended up funding another woman and paying installments on a condo registered in his mother's name. But I didn't expose him. Not yet. Instead, I sighed. Played the disappointed wife. My God, why would you do this without telling me? That was our life savings. Years of sacrifice. Relief washed over his face. He grabbed my hand, desperate to seal the lie. I just wanted a better future for us, he pleaded. As soon as the market recovers, I'll give you everything to manage. I looked at him. Really looked. And felt nothing but contempt. That future he talked about? It wasn't for us. It was for him, and his mistress built on my sweat. I pulled my hand away and stood up. Fine, I said coldly. But don't ever let me find out you're hiding anything else. I walked into the kitchen, leaving him behind, relieved, yet uneasy. He thought he had fooled me. But that stock market excuse. It sealed his fate. That night, as he slept beside me, I wasn't thinking about forgiveness. I was thinking about numbers. Lawyers. Recovery. I would take back every cent he stole. And the price he'd pay wouldn't just be financial. It would be his reputation. His career. His pride. Because betrayal doesn't end at love, it spreads into money, trust, and dignity. And this? This was only the beginning. I wanted to look stunning, not to regain Cass's attention, but so everyone could see how perfect the wife he was cheating on was. At the party, amidst soft music and the shimmer of chandeliers, I quickly identified my target, Mrs. Caldwell, the deputy director's wife. Mrs. Caldwell was known for being the company loudspeaker, a woman who loved gossip, and always looked for juicy news to liven up her afternoon teas. With a glass of wine in hand, I approached her while she showed off her new emerald ring. After a few minutes of trivial chat about fashion and beauty, I sighed with an air of melancholy. Mrs. Caldwell, astute, noticed immediately, leaned in and whispered with curiosity, "What's wrong, Zara? You don't seem very happy. Has good old Cassius done something to you?" I looked around as if fearing someone would hear us, and led her to a more discreet corner, speaking in a low voice with a tone of trust and concern. "Oh, Mrs. Caldwell, I'm telling you because I consider you like a sister. Please don't tell anyone. It's so embarrassing." Mrs. Caldwell's eyes lit up like lighthouses. She nodded repeatedly. "Girl, of course. Just between us. My lips are sealed. What you tell me goes to the grave with me." I bit my lip, hesitating for a moment before speaking. "It's just that lately I'm very worried. The days I was traveling, the doorman of my building told me he saw my husband's car leave at dawn and come back almost at sunrise. And the weirdest thing is that there was always a woman in the passenger seat. I trust my husband blindly. He's very good and a bit boring, but I've heard rumors. They say the silhouette of that woman was very familiar, that she looked like my sister-in-law." Mrs. Caldwell was left jaw-dropped. She almost dropped her wine glass. She stammered. "What? Your sister-in-law? But are you sure? What a scandal." I rushed to wave my hands with a panicked face, as if it had slipped out. "Oh no, they're just rumors. Surely people were mistaken. Or maybe Cases was taking her somewhere on the way. They are family. Please don't think badly of him. I'm just worried that malicious tongues will hurt him at the company." The more I defended him, the more Mrs. Caldwell was convinced of the conspiracy. She patted me on the arm with a look of compassion mixed with the excitement of having a scoop. "Oh, you poor thing. You're so good. You're foolish. In these times, you can't trust anyone, and even less when the fire is close to the straw. Don't you worry. I'll keep an eye out to see if there's any hussy lurking around your husband." With tears in my eyes, I thanked her while inwardly smiling with disdain. I knew Mrs. Caldwell perfectly. As soon as I turned around, she would embellish the story and tell it to at least 10 other people during the party, starting with her classic, "I'll tell you something, but don't tell anyone." The rumor would spread like a toxic wind, sowing doubt and contempt over Cass's head. That night, as I walked arm in arm with my husband receiving compliments on how happy and good we looked, I felt the stars and whispers behind our backs, the giggles loaded with double meanings. Cases, oblivious to everything, smiled and toasted, not knowing that a storm of public opinion was forming over him, and that the person who had unleashed it was his own wife. The sensation of using the malicious tongues of the world to punish a traitor was at once cruel and strangely satisfying. Just as I had foreseen, the toxic wind of rumor took effect at breakneck speed. A few days after the party, the atmosphere at home became suffocating. Cassius arrived from work frowning, throwing his briefcase on the sofa with rage. The strong smell of alcohol coming off him was unmistakable. I, who was reading, put down the book and, feigning concern, ran to take off his jacket. "Have you been drinking? Why so much today? Did something happen at the office?" Cassius pushed my hand away and let himself fall heavily onto the sofa, loosening his tie as if he were being strangled. He grunted. "Man, that bunch of gossiping old ladies always inventing things to stain people's names." I served him a glass of water with lemon and sat beside him, rubbing his back, agitated by anger. My voice was innocence personified. "What's wrong, honey? Who said something about you? Tell me. He who owes nothing fears nothing. If we live with a clear conscience, what do we care what others say?" Cassius turned to look at me with bloodshot eyes. He observed me intently, as if trying to guess if I knew something, or if I was also part of the gossip. But my face only reflected worry and absolute trust, which made him look down and sigh. "You don't know anything. They're saying around there. They're saying I'm having an affair. And on top of that, with better, you don't hear it. You'll dirty your ears. They're jealous. Since they know I'm about to be promoted to deputy director, they're trying to sink me." Inside, I smiled. "So you also know what pain and humiliation feel like when people whisper behind your back." I continued, adding fuel to the fire with my usual sweet tone. "Wow, who can control wagging tongues? Surely, it's because you help everyone and you're very attractive and people envy you. But don't react so brusquely. The more you defend yourself, the more they'll think it's true. Ignore them and go on with your life. If you're innocent, no one can do anything to you." My phrase, "the more you defend yourself, the more they'll think it's true," was like a needle stuck in a sensitive spot. Cassius jumped, turned around and muttered, "Yeah, I haven't done anything, so I have nothing to fear. It just bothers me." But I clearly saw his hand shaking, not from rage but from fear. He was afraid that the truth would come to light, that the rumors weren't just air, but the smoke preceding the fire. That night, Cases didn't eat dinner. He locked himself in the bathroom and let the water run for a long time, as if he wanted to wash off the dirty words that had stuck to his body. From the living room, listening to the sound of the water, I felt a strange indifference. He suffered because his honor had been sullied. But did he think of my honor or Tavon's when he committed his depraved acts? He despised me for being a woman who only took care of the house. But it was that very woman who, step by step, was tightening the noose around his neck. And he still believed it was an affectionate hug. Late at night, when Cases was already sleeping deeply under the effects of alcohol, his phone on the nightstand lit up a message. I glanced at it and without need. Unlock it, read the brief text on the lock screen. "I'm so scared. People look at me weird. What if we end it?" It was a message from Anea. I smiled with disdain. Their diabolical alliance was more fragile than I thought. A little social pressure, and it was already starting to crack. I didn't delete the message. I left it there so Cassius would read it when he woke up, so he could see that his little mistress was also trembling, and that he, the supposed man, ran the risk of losing everything. His drunkenness tonight might help him forget reality for a moment, but tomorrow, upon waking, the real nightmare would have only just begun. I turned off the light. Darkness flooded the room, but in my eyes, the path ahead was clearer than ever. The pressure of the rumors not only took away Case's sleep, but also deeply affected Anaya, the weakest link in this story. Thanks to the detective's information and her behavior in the family group chat, I realized Anaya was on the verge of a panic attack. She started acting strangely. She would log on late at night. She posted vague and melancholic statuses about life and loneliness and deleted them a few minutes later. Every night around 1 or 2 a.m. When Cassius thought I was sleeping, he would sneak into the bathroom with his phone. His whispers, though, reached me in the silence of the night. I heard the irritation in his voice and the sobs on the other end of the line. Anaya was tormenting him. She was afraid of her coworkers' stares, afraid of Ton's unconditional love. While she carried immense guilt, she wanted Cassius to take responsibility, to protect her, or at least give her some kind of guarantee. To relieve the pressure, Anaya launched into a spiral of compulsive shopping. The detective sent me bills for luxury brands and expensive cosmetics that she paid for without blinking. I knew that money didn't come from her modest salary, nor from what Taven gave her, but from the savings Cassius had been slipping her in secret. Seeing the figures in that covert financial report, I felt a sharp pain. The money I had earned with so much effort had become the tranquilizer for an adulteress. But what caught my attention most wasn't the luxuries, but a photo the detective had taken the previous afternoon. Anaya, wearing a mask, huge sunglasses, and a furtive look, was entering a private gynecological clinic hidden in a small alley. She was inside for almost an hour and came out with her face undone, clutching her bag against her belly as if hiding a terrible secret. My woman's intuition told me that a storm much bigger than everything before was about to break. In Ania's visit to the gynecologist at this delicate moment, added to her panic, and the late-night calls could only point to one thing. She had an ace up her sleeve, a weapon that could destroy everything or save her situation. A small life was forming. I sat on the sofa watching the night sky, black and starless, and a chill ran down my spine. If Anaya was really pregnant, and the child was Cassius's, the tragedy of this family would reach its peak. What would become of Taven and my parents? How would I face such a cruel truth? But I clenched my fists tight, my nails dug into my skin. Whatever happened, I couldn't collapse. I had come too far to turn back. If she planned to use that baby as a shield to pressure Cassius or to bind Tavon, I would turn that child into the rope that would hang them both. I would wait. I would wait for her to show her cards, and then I would show everyone the repugnant face of those who invoke love to commit despicable acts. The storm was gathering. The heavy sky seemed about to collapse, announcing a turbulent tomorrow. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and prepared for the next blow, a blow called blood ties. That weekend, a fine cold drizzle fell over the city. The chill of early winter seeped into the bones, but inside my parents' small house, the atmosphere was warm. It smelled of home cooking, and laughter could be heard. My parents, country folk, simple and hard-working, only wished to see their children happy, so every time we gathered, they went out of their way in the kitchen without letting anyone help them. I was in the living room peeling fruit. But my ears were attentive to everything, and my gaze didn't leave Anaya, who was sitting curled up in a corner of the sofa with a pale face, and dark circles from sleepless nights. Lunch was served with all the delicacies my mother had prepared since morning. Roast chicken, beef stew, ham, and good wine. Tavon, my brother, with his usual carefree attitude, didn't stop serving food to his wife, telling her anecdotes from work and future plans. He looked at her with absolute love and trust. Seeing him, my heart shrank. It was like watching an innocent child playing on the edge of a cliff. Suddenly, Anaya put her silverware on the table. The sharp metallic sound cut the conversation. She covered her mouth, hesitated for an instant, and after taking a deep breath, as if to gather courage, said with a trembling voice, "Mom, Dad, everyone, I have something to tell you." Everyone fell silent, their gazes locked on her. Anaya looked sideways at Cassius. My husband. That look contained a mixture of pleading and threat. Then she lowered her head and whispered, "I'm pregnant." Her words were like an atomic bomb dropped on the table, creating a sepulchral silence that exploded into a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Tavon stood paralyzed for a few seconds, and then shouted with joy, jumping to hug his wife. "My God, really? I'm going to be a father. Dad, Mom, I'm going to be a dad." My parents were radiant. My mother, with tears in her eyes, clasped her hands and thanked the ancestors. She quickly served her daughter-in-law a plate of hot stew. "Eat, honey. Eat so my grandson grows strong. No wonder I saw you looking so pale lately." Amidst that euphoria, only 3 people felt something different. Ina forced a smile, a grimace that looked like crying. She brought her hand to her belly, not to protect it, but as if clinging to a last lifesaver. I remained motionless like a statue, observing everything with a frigid gaze. But the one who reacted most violently was Cases. Upon hearing the words, "I'm pregnant," his face lost all color. The silverware fell from his hands, making a strident noise amidst the congratulations. He stared at Anea with eyes bulging with panic and terror, stammering unintelligible words. Tavon, too happy to notice, bent down to pick up the silverware for him, laughing. "Brother-in-law, are you so happy your hands are shaking? Surely you really wanted to be an uncle, too." Cass jumped in, taking the silverware, tried to sketch a smile that was more pathetic than a wail. Yes. Yes, I'm very happy. Congratulations." He drank a glass of water in one gulp to hide his trembling, but sweat was already beading on his forehead. I read his dark soul in that instant. He was terrified. That pregnancy wasn't in his plans. It was a dangerous variable that could destroy everything he tried to hide. Anea had used the baby as her last card to force him to assume responsibility, or at least to bind Tavon and secure an exit. I raised my glass of water and with a voice calm but full of double meaning, addressed Ina. "Congratulations to you both. What great joy, Anna. A pregnancy is something very important. Make sure you go to all the checkups to know exactly how many weeks along you are and take good care of yourself." Hearing me mention the weeks of gestation, Anea jumped. Her face palled. She bent down in a hurry to drink soup, avoiding my inquisitive gaze. The meal continued amidst the laughter of my parents and Tavon. But under the table, legs were shaking with fear, and in the heart of each, a storm began to brew. After the party ended, we said goodbye to my parents and returned home. Now at night, the interior of my husband's luxury car plunged into a dense and heavy silence, so much so that the hum of the engine and the sound of tires on wet asphalt could be heard. Cassius drove with hands clutching the steering wheel, knuckles white from tension. His gaze was fixed on the road, but I knew his mind was chaos. The impact of the lunch news hadn't dissipated yet. The pregnancy was like a rock pressing on his chest, making breathing difficult. I, in the passenger seat, leaned my head back and pretended to sleep, but in reality I observed every one of his gestures. I knew he was mired in uncertainty, wondering whose son that was, Tavon's, or the result of his torrid siestas in motel with Anea. That doubt was eating him alive, turning him into a pathetic coward. I broke the sullen silence. My voice, though soft, resonated in the confined space, making Casia start as if he had received an electric shock. "Is something wrong, honey? I just called your name. No need to get scared like that." Casia swallowed, trying to keep calm. "No, it's just that I was focused on the road." "What did you want?" I turned to look at him in profile. The yellowish light of the street lamps filtering through the window revealed drops of sweat on his temple. Despite the cold air conditioning, I smiled. A smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'm so happy for Anea and Tavon. Although it's weird, don't you think? Tavon spends his life away for work. They've barely seen each other. But what aim, huh? A gift from heaven." My comment was like a poisoned arrow straight to his deepest fear. Cassius swerved and the car wobbled for an instant before recovering stability. Well, they're newlyweds. These things happen. Surely it was during one of Tavon's quick visits home. His voice was a breathless whisper. He didn't dare look at me. I continued my attack with the same innocent tone, but if I remember correctly, Tavon has been away almost a month and just came back yesterday, and Anea said she's several weeks along. I didn't forget to ask her. Tomorrow I'll call her to tell her to get a detailed ultrasound. With today's technology, you can know the exact day of conception to see if it coincides with Ton's return, lest there be some confusion, and the poor guy gets upset. Cassius went mute, not daring to say anything else. I watched his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed. His face was pure tension. Fear. Because if the pregnancy timeline matched the days Tavon was away, and the nights he and Anea met in secret, it would destroy him. His honor. His life. I turned to the window, watching city lights blur past, and smiled to myself. His silence was the answer. He didn't want that child. To him, it wasn't a blessing, it was evidence. Living proof of his sin. But for Anea, that baby was her lifeline. And that's when I saw it clearly. The two accomplices were no longer aligned. Their interests were colliding. And that crack. That's where I would enter and tear their alliance apart. Just before we reached the garage, I spoke softly as if it were nothing. Didn't you notice something? Anea didn't look happy about the pregnancy. She looked afraid. He didn't respond. He slammed the gas pedal, the car diving into the darkness just like his life. After that night, everything changed. Tavon floated on a cloud of fatherhood, calling me daily, telling me about Anea's cravings, treating her like royalty. Meanwhile, the guilty ones lived in hell. Anea used the pregnancy as leverage. She wanted money, security, status. And Cassius. He wanted out. I sat in my office scrolling through Anea's Facebook post, an ultrasound photo with a caption that made me laugh coldly. A gift from God. Mommy will protect you at all costs. Protect or blackmail. I needed certainty. But I couldn't act openly. Not yet. So I called Michaela. I need your help, I said quietly. Do you know anyone at Anea's clinic? She hesitated. That's illegal. Zara. Are you crazy? I don't need everything, I replied. Just the due date. From that, the truth would reveal itself. While waiting, I executed the next phase division. That night, I brought him orange juice on the balcony, my voice full of concern. Anea was crying today, I said. She kept saying someone wanted her to abort, someone didn't want responsibility. The cigarette slipped from his fingers. She said that. He whispered. I shrugged innocently. Who would want her to abort? That sentence destroyed him. Fear turned into resentment. Resentment into paranoia. At the same time, Anea received an anonymous message. Your lover plans to abandon you. He's hiding assets. You and your baby are obstacles. From that moment on, they weren't lovers anymore. They were enemies. One saw the baby as a weapon. The other saw it as a catastrophe. And I simply watched, allow the fire to grow. Then came the truth that changed everything. Michaela placed a thick file on the table. Zara, she said gravely, this isn't just adultery. I opened it. Invoices. Contracts. Transfers. Proof that my husband had been stealing, inflating prices, taking commissions, funneling money through ghost accounts. Almost $1 million. Misappropriation, Michaela said quietly. Prison-level crime. In that moment, jealousy vanished. What I felt was disgust. Not as a wife but as a businesswoman. This, I said calmly, closing the file, is the sentence I needed. That evening, I looked at him sitting on the couch, pretending to be calm. And felt nothing. Only pity. He didn't know the scythe was already raised. The next day, I made the final move. I called Tavon. He answered cheerfully, talking about barbecue plans. I forced my voice steady. I might know someone at Anaya's clinic, I said casually. She's very thorough. Nothing escapes her. Silence. Then panic. I smiled. Maybe I'll ask her to check the file, just to be safe. I hung up knowing the hook was set. Minutes later, the GPS tracker under my husband's car lit up. Streets until it stopped at a hidden place Lotus Lounge. 15 minutes later, Anaya arrived. Disguised. Nervous. Two people who swore loyalty, now hiding like thieves. I typed the message. Saved it. Waited. And when the moment was perfect I sent it. Your wife and your brother-in-law are together at Lotus Lounge. Go now. Find out whose child she's carrying. Tavon read it again. And again. The suspicion that had been planted was now burning. And the curtain was about to fall. Trembling, he called Anaya. The phone rang again and again, but no one answered. He called Cassius. The same result. The phone was off or out of range. Their silence was the clearest confession. Blood rushed to his head. He threw his hard hat on the ground and shouted at the workers, "That's it for today. Everyone go home." Without further explanation, he ran to his motorcycle and took off like a madman. Despite the rain and the slippery asphalt, only one thought was in his mind. He had to go there. He had to see it with his own eyes. The happy images of his family. Anaya's smile. Cassius's encouraging pats. Everything crumbled in his mind, turning into sharp fragments tearing his heart. The 6-mile ride seemed like an eternity. He drove screaming under the rain. Tears mixed with water, salty on his lips. He prayed for it to be a bad joke, that upon arrival he would find nothing, that his wife would be at home resting. But his reason reminded him of Enia's strange behavior, Cassius's elusive look at the last family meal. When his motorcycle braked hard in front of the lounge, I saw my brother from my car, soaked with eyes bloodshot like a wounded animal. Without asking anyone, he burst into the place with a fury that made the employees step aside, frightened. I gripped the steering wheel with my heart beating wildly, watching with pain as my brother entered the den of betrayal. Tavon ran like a whirlwind down the wooden hallway, his thunderous steps drowning out the sound of the rain. He stopped in front of the door to VIP booth 3, the place indicated in the message. His breathing was agitated, his chest rising and falling violently. From inside came the sobs of a woman, and the shouts of a man. Sounds so familiar they left him paralyzed. And now what do we do? Zara suspects something. I'm so scared. What if Tavon finds out? Anaya's voice, trembling. Shut up already. Why didn't you take the pill, and now you blame me? I told you to get an abortion. Cassius' voice, cold and cruel. Tavon couldn't take it any more. With all his might, he kicked the door. Bang. The door flew open, crashing against the wall. The scene revealed before his eyes was rawer than any nightmare. Under the dim light, Anna was sitting on the floor crying with her clothes disheveled. Cassius was standing in front of her with a wad of bills in his hand, about to throw them at her. Seeing Tavon in the doorway, soaked with eyes red as hell, they stood petrified. Tavon. Anya stammered, pale as a ghost. Cassius dropped the bills, which flew across the floor. He stood mouth open, trembling, unable to articulate a word. Tavon looked at the two people he loved most in the world with a lump in his throat. The pain was so immense it paralyzed him. Only his eyes shed 2 rivers of burning tears. Why? Why you two? Why did you do this to me? He screamed with a heartbreaking wail. He lunged at Cassius, not to hit him, but to grab him by the collar of his shirt and slam him against the wall. "You're my brother-in-law, my brother. How could you sleep with my wife? How did you dare?" Cassius, terrified, tried to break free, pleading, "Tavon, calm down. Let me explain. It's not what it looks like. It was her who seduced me." Case's cowardly excuse was the last straw. Tavon punched him in the face. Pow! Blood gushed from Cassius's nose, and he fell to the floor, groaning. Enia screamed and clung to Tavon's legs. "Don't hit him, please. It was him. Coward, miserable wretch. When you were enjoying it, you called me your love, your treasure, and now that we've been caught, you wash your hands of it. You told me your wife was a piece of wood, that you were sick of that old woman." Those who until a few minutes ago were passionate lovers were now tearing each other apart, revealing their dirtiest secrets. Tavon, in the middle of the storm, looked at them with empty eyes. Disappointment had hit rock bottom. "Enough," he shouted. His voice, horsero but imposing, silenced them. "You act very well. Better than in a soap opera. So do you. I was just a clown, a fool to manipulate, right?" Cassius dragged himself to him. "Tavon, listen to me. This woman is a harpy. I only had a moment of weakness." Tavon stepped back, looking at him with disgust. "Shut up. Don't pronounce my name with your dirty mouth. Brotherhood? A brother sleeps with your wife and turns you into the cuckold raising his child." Cassius was left speechless. Enia cried again. "Tavon, our son. Think of our son." Tavon's gaze rested on Enia's belly. He hesitated for an instant, but then it turned icy. "Are you sure it's my son and not this wretch's? And even if it were, a mother as lying and promiscuous as you doesn't deserve to raise him." The phrase was the final stab. Enia collapsed, crying in silence. The luxurious booth was now a desolate battlefield, full of the remains of trust and honor, impregnated with the smell of betrayal and despair. Tavon clenched his fists, about to explode again. I knew it was time to intervene. I couldn't allow my brother in a fit of rage to end up with legal problems. "Tavon, stop," I said, putting myself between him and Cassius. "It's not worth it. He doesn't deserve you ruining your future for him." Tavon looked at me with eyes full of tears. "Zara, it hurts too much. I hate them." I hugged him. "I know, but let's go. Staying here will only hurt us more. I'll take care of the punishment. I promise." They won't go unpunished." My calm seemed to reassure him. He rested his head on my shoulder, collapsing. I turned to Cases and Enia, who were huddled in a corner. My look was pure contempt. I took out my phone. "Have you finished your performance? Well, listen well. Everything you've done, everything you've said today, and even your encounters in my own bed, I have it all recorded." Hearing the word recorded, Case's face decomposed. "What? What are you saying? You recorded it all?" I smiled coldly. "Not only that, I have 2 minutes of video of your romp in my marital bed, your disgusting chats, the bank transfers. I have everything. I thought I'd keep a minimum of respect for you, but I see you don't deserve it, so don't blame me for being cruel." Enia fainted, or pretended to. Cassius slumped in a chair, sweating buckets. He knew that with that evidence, his life and career were finished. I took Tavon by the arm and turned my back on him. "Let's go, Tavon. Let them devour each other in their own mud. In our house, there is no room for people like that." Upon leaving the lounge, the rain had subsided, but the cold wind kept blowing. Tavon walked beside me like an automaton. I didn't take him to his condo or my parents' house. I drove to Makata's apartment. It was the safest place where he could vent without anyone seeing him, and where I would show him the rawest truth so he would open his eyes completely. I saw him crying silently in the rearview mirror. My soul ached, but I knew it was a necessary pain. He had to suffer to the bottom to be able to remove that tumor and start over. Courage, brother, I thought. After the storm, the sun always comes out. Makata's apartment on the 25th floor was a haven of peace. Makata had prepared a room and a hot teapot. Without asking questions, she left us alone. Tavon was sitting on the sofa, trembling with a lost gaze. I knew words of comfort would be useless. He needed a dose of reality. Tavon, look at this, I said, showing him. Body, insulting her own husband. Tavon couldn't take it. He slapped the phone away and ran to the bathroom to vomit. He vomited the bile, the trust, and the blind love he had professed for her. I watched him from the door with a shrinking heart. His pain hurt me, but I felt relieved that he finally knew the truth. When he came out, his face was pale and gaunt, but his eyes had changed. There was no weakness anymore, but a flame of hate and cold determination. Zara, I was wrong. I was stupid. I killed myself working to give her a better life, and she treated me like an imbecile. I took his hand. It's not your fault. The fault lies with people's wickedness. Now you have to be strong and resolve this. What do you plan to do with Anaya? Tavon remained silent for a moment and then looked at me with steely determination. Immediate divorce. I never want to see her again. The child. If it's mine, I'll take care of it. If not, I'll kick them both out onto the street. I nodded, admiring his firmness. Good. I'll help you with the paperwork. And as for Cassius, he won't get away scot-free either. Tomorrow he'll know what hit him. That night we stayed together in silence. The storm had passed, and although dawn would bring more battles, we knew justice was on our side. The next morning I woke up with unusual mental clarity. While Tavon slept, I met with Mika in the living room. On the table was a sealed file, the death sentence for Cassius's career and life with all the evidence we had collected. Everything ready, Makata? I asked. She nodded, pushing the file toward me. Everything ready. The complaint is drafted, addressed to the board of directors, the audit committee, and the union of his company. I've attached a USB drive with all the recordings, photos, and bank statements. I just need your approval to send it. I didn't hesitate for a second. Send it. Let him taste the flavor of the bitterest failure. Maka smiled, and with a click, the bomb was activated. Less than 2. Chain of events was unleashed. The company called an emergency meeting. They called Cassius to the CEO's office. Upon leaving, his face was a poem. He had the suspension letter without pay in his hand. Security escorted him out of the building in front of hundreds of stunned employees. No explanations. No dignity. Years of reputation gone in minutes. By sunset, the whispers had turned into headlines. Infidelity. Corruption. Betrayal. His name became a warning. Partners cut ties. Friends vanished. Creditors called non-stop. And I sat quietly at Maka's house, holding a warm cup of tea, imagining him standing alone with nothing but consequences. That was only the beginning. That afternoon, his number appeared on my phone. I watched it ring. And ring. Then I blocked it. Justice had started moving, and I had no intention of slowing it down. I woke Tavon gently. Get up, brother, I said. The day has just begun. By noon, the doorbell rang. 2 men from the bank. A foreclosure notice. $300,000. 6 months earlier, he had mortgaged our home behind my back. I remembered signing those papers trusting him, when he said it was just a company guarantee. Now that signature stared back at me like a trap. At that exact moment, he stumbled in, smelling of alcohol, eyes hollow. He tried to run. I stopped him. Where do you think you're going? Come inside. Face it. He collapsed to his knees, begging. Save me. Please. If they take the house, we'll be homeless. I looked at him and felt nothing. There is no we, I said calmly. I'll sell the house, pay the debt, and keep what's left as compensation for my stolen years. You mortgaged my trust. Now you'll pay for it. He knew I meant every word. Meanwhile, Tavon packed Anaya's things into 2 suitcases. When she arrived, she found them outside soaked in rain. I'm pregnant. She screamed. Tavon's voice was ice. Don't use the child as an excuse. This house is not a shelter for betrayal. The door closed. Her next stop was the apartment he'd bought for her. She found him drunk and furious. Because of you, I lost everything. He shouted, striking her. She cried. You promised to protect us. He laughed. That money came from mortgaging my wife's house. Now get out. Her clothes scattered across the street as rain poured down. Sitting there, soaked and broken, Anaya laughed a hollow, terrifying laugh. She dreamed of being a queen, and ended buried under fake gold. The next day, I met him near the courthouse. I placed the divorce papers and evidence file on the table. He barely looked human anymore. Do you really want a divorce? He whispered. I sipped my tea. 10 years of loyalty repaid with betrayal, debt, and crime. I slid the file closer. If I take this to the police, how long do you think you'll last? He fell to his knees. Please, don't send me to jail. I felt no pity. Sign and walk away with nothing. Or face prison. With shaking hands, he signed. 10 years ended with a crooked signature. That night, his mother arrived furious. She blamed me. I listened. Then I turned on the TV. 2 minutes was all it took. When it ended, she wept. I didn't know, I'm sorry. She left carrying shame, not anger. And for me, that was closure. I sold the condo. Paid the debt. Bought a small house with a garden. Invited my parents and Tavon to live with me. The first night there, listening to crickets, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. Sometimes losing everything means finding yourself. Tavon healed slowly. Silence turned into strength. He found a new job. Laughter returned. As for Anaya, she gave birth to a child who looked exactly like his father. She struggled. He vanished. One day Tavon saw her on a live stream, bitter and broken. He turned it off without emotion. When there's no hate left, he said, it means you're free. And he was right. Our house filled with warmth. No lies. No secrets. One night, Maka smiled at me. You look radiant. I smiled back. It's because I belong to myself now. At 35, my career reignited. New projects. New purpose. No regret. Being firm with the wicked was mercy toward myself. I looked at the sky wide and blue. Life ahead felt like a blank canvas. Storms may come again, but this time, I know who I am.